Prior to the 19th century, scholars who investigated the human mind generally did so within a philosophical context. Establishing psychology as a distinct academic discipline required the development of empirical measurement, transforming abstract questions about the soul into a data-driven science. This graph maps that transition. The horizontal axis covers the timeline from the late 19th century to the present. The vertical axis represents the spectrum of measurement. At the top pole is the internal mind. This represents the subjective experience, the specific thoughts and feelings known only to the individual. At the bottom pole is external behavior. This isolates the strictly observable physical actions of the human body in its environment. The history of psychology traces a pendulum swinging between these two poles, as different schools of thought prioritized either internal experience or external evidence. In 1879, Wilhelm Wundt established the first laboratory for psychological research at the University of Leipzig. Wundt's structuralism used a process called introspection to identify the components of consciousness. He utilized instruments to measure reaction time to within 1,000th of a second, attempting to observe the human mind like any other aspect of nature. At the same time, William James helped establish functionalism, an approach influenced by the Darwinian theory of evolution. While structuralists focused on the individual parts of the mind, functionalists studied the operation of the whole mind and how mental activities helped an organism fit into its environment. However, Wundt's reliance on introspection created a significant methodological hurdle. Because the process was highly subjective, there was very little agreement between different individuals reporting on the same stimuli. Because inner experience could not be reliably verified or replicated, the young science began to fracture into competing methodologies. Pushing deeper into the internal mind, Austrian neurologist Sigmund Freud developed psychoanalytic theory. Freud theorized that many psychological disturbances arose from the unconscious mind, a repository of feelings and urges of which the individual has no conscious awareness. Simultaneously, Max Wertheimer and his colleagues introduced Gestalt Psychology, which directly challenged the structuralist desire to break sensory experience into parts. Gestalt researchers argued that while a song is made of individual notes, the human individual responds to the melody, rhythm, and harmony as a unified whole. Freud's focus on the unconscious continues to influence clinical psychotherapy, and Gestalt principles remain foundational to modern research on sensation and perception. Yet, their reliance on unobservable inner states frustrated researchers who demanded strict empirical evidence. This frustration led to a rejection of the study of consciousness. In the early 20th century, the American psychological establishment began to exclusively study observable behavior. John B. Watson argued that objective analysis of the mind was impossible. He became a major proponent of shifting focus to the observation and control of behavior. Behaviorists primarily studied learned behavior, such as Ivan Pavlov's research into the conditioned reflex, where a subject produces an unconscious response to an associated stimulus. This school of thought was furthered by B.F. Skinner, who focused on how behavior is affected by its consequences. Skinner developed the principles of modifying behavior through reinforcement and punishment, major factors he believed drove all human action. To test these principles, he utilized the Skinner box, isolating subjects to deliver food or noise to reinforce or punish specific behaviors. Behaviorism is deterministic, viewing human action as entirely determined by genetics and environment, leaving no room for the internal mind. Behaviorism successfully established psychology as a scientific discipline through objective, experimental methods, but it achieved this by reducing human beings to stimulus-response machines. By the mid-20th century, many psychologists grew uncomfortable with both the pessimism of Freud and the reductionism of behaviorism. Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers pioneered humanism, a perspective that emphasizes the potential for good that is innate to all humans. Maslow asserted that human behavior is motivated by a hierarchy of needs, and that individuals possess a drive for self-actualization. This pyramid builds from basic survival needs, like food and shelter, toward higher-level social and emotional fulfillment, culminating in the achievement of one's full potential. Humanism insisted on a research program that accounted for the whole human being, proving an accurate model of psychology must include personal control and intentionality. In the 1950s, developments in neuroscience, linguistics, and computer science provided the technical framework necessary to integrate mental functioning back into experimental psychology. Noam Chomsky was influential in this shift, arguing that the field had to reincorporate mental functioning to offer meaningful contributions to understanding behavior. This movement became known as the cognitive revolution. It returned the field's focus to the mind, but modeled mental processes as complex information processing systems. Psychologists began collaborating across disciplines, from anthropology to neuroscience, creating a prominent interdisciplinary field known as the cognitive sciences. By applying the strict, objective experimental methods of behaviorism to the internal processes of the mind, the cognitive revolution stabilized the pendulum in the center of the spectrum. Despite achieving objective rigor, psychology still harbored a foundational demographic flaw. Because the field was dominated by Western male academics, psychology developed with inherent biases. Few women were able to practice, and the subjects of most experiments were primarily men. Researchers identified that early data was drawn almost exclusively from weird societies: Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. When psychologists compared these results to non-weird societies, they found significant differences in how people perceive the world, cooperate with others, and approach moral reasoning. Corrective movements in the 1960s began to address these gaps. Naomi Weinstein stimulated a feminist revolution in psychology by challenging male cultural biases and demanding experimental verification for characterizations of women. This period also saw the rise of multicultural research. Mamie Phipps Clark and Kenneth Clark conducted rigorous studies on African American children that proved instrumental in the desegregation of the United States school system. Modern psychology has evolved into a highly interdisciplinary science, utilizing diverse ethnic and professional organizations to expand the scope of research. It is no longer a battle between competing schools of thought. By synthesizing cognitive models, rigorous experimentation, and diverse global data, the field is building a comprehensive map of human nature.